Hello and welcome to the next edition of my podcast. Today I'm delighted to be joined yet again by Kieran Maguire. Kieran's been absolutely excellent throughout this. He's been a mainstay in these podcasts. I may as well call it the Kieran Maguire podcast, but that already exists. That's the Price of Football podcast with Kevin Day, available on Spotify. That's a little plug at the very start. But
thank you very much.
Over the last few days at Wigan Athletic, it's been very intriguing. I think it's really hammered home the severity of our situation with the club statement last night, setting a deadline for the buyers for the 31st of August, meaning that if the club don't find a buyer, there is very dangerous opportunities for this to be really pear-shaped. And obviously, it's so important that Wigan are able to find a buyer, and we've got to a really precarious position now. And Kieran, I'm not sure if you read the statement. I'd like to see if you can kind of run down the statement and give your thoughts on it.
Well, the administrators have published a report. I've had about 3 minutes to look at it. There's about 20 pages at least. So the overall summary was they are still keen to sell the club. They've had some knockbacks from potential buyers. There's been quite a few tire kickers, but they have said in order to try to get rid of those people that they wanted a non-refundable £100,000 deposit put down by people, and that sort of got rid of an awful lot of the clowns who often appear in relation to situations of this nature. The club owes around about 40 odd million, I think around about 42 million, of which a lot of money is due to the next leader fund. It does look as if the next leader fund did actually put in about £930,000 after taking over the club to pay for the running costs, and then it all stopped. So again, there's more questions than answers involved. The costs of the administration have been very high, not higher than you would expect for a business, but I think it's around about £350,000 to the end of July for the administration costs. You've also got legal costs, which over £400,000 as well, relating to the sale, the appeal, investigation. So it's in the best interests of everybody that the administrators sell the club as quickly as possible, because that means that clock will slow down. It won't stop because there'll still be things that I'll have to do to tidy up. Quite a bit of money is owed to. Quite a lot of money is owed to HMRC. There's money owed to other football clubs as well, in respect of outstanding transfer money, outstanding loans, and things of that nature. And the good thing is that if the club is sold, you've then got to pay 25 pence in the pound to the unsecured creditors, and unless you do that, you get a 15-point penalty as well. So there's a little bit of good news, but there's some quite scary numbers involved as well.
So can you maybe go into a little bit more on the 25p to a pound, because a lot of Wigan Athletic fans have been quite curious to see what that actually means. They're not really sure on the terminology. So would a sports finance expert like yourself be able to delve into it?
Right. Well, I'm not a lawyer, as you know. I'm just a teacher. But the way that it works is, let's say that you've supplied Wigan with coaches for transport to away matches, and let's say that you're owed £100,000 by Wigan Athletic Football Club. The administrators have got to be in a position whereby they can pay at least £25,000 of that. And if that is the case, then there's no further deductions. If it's if they sell the club and effectively everybody queues up for their share, so the football creditors are first, then anybody that's got a mortgage and things like that. If the money left for all of the people after the football creditors have been paid out, if they get less than 25 pence for every pound that they are owed, then potentially there's a 15-point deduction under EFL rules.
What are the chances, do you think, of Wigan avoiding this 25p to a pound deduction, which is obviously the punishment for obviously not paying that?
Well, I think there would have been a far greater chance of being able to make that payment had Wigan not been relegated as a result of the actions which took place in June. Because if the administrators are selling Wigan as a championship club and they get £7 million a year in TV money, then the buyer is going to be willing to pay more than as I was a League One club when they've only got £1 to £1.5 million of TV money to look forward to next season. So I think it's going to be a genuine challenge. The longer it drags on before the sale, we've seen the costs of running the administration. I think they were set 340 grand to the end of July. So that's costing what, 10 grand a day, probably something of that nature. If this drags on till the end of August, if it drags on into September, then every penny that goes to the administrators is money which is less in the pot to pay out to the unsecured creditors. So it's going to be a really tough gig. We're hoping that somebody will come in with the right intentions. Looking again at the administrator's report, there was somebody who seemed quite interested, but immediately upon the 12-point penalty being given to the club, they changed their offer and they put in a fairly derisory offer. So that's not helping either. We'll have to wait and see. I'm sure the administrators, that they've got their professional pride on this, as well as the fact that it's the nature of the work they do on a day-to-day basis. They want to sell the club successfully. It's good for their reputation. It's good for the reputation of the industry.
Do you think that the deadline set for the 31st of August is almost like not a scare tactic as such, but a way to speed up any processes to buy the club and obviously eliminate any bidders that are probably prancing around and not as serious as you may get another bidder? Obviously, it's hard to name any bidders because it is confidential at the moment, as it should be.
Yes. I think the 31st of August, I think that's a realistic deadline set by the administrators, because they know that whoever comes in has a football season which is starting second week in September. And the new owners will want to appoint a manager. They'll want to appoint coaches. They'll be starting to look for recruitment. And if the administration drags on to the end of September to October, once we reach the end of the transfer window, the administrators have got nothing to sell, and they have listed out, I think they've sold 2 players for £800,000. This was before the player who was sold to Leeds yesterday. So they are trying to generate money, but I would imagine that whoever does come in will want to be recruiting players rather than selling them, because they'll be serious about getting out of League One next season.
Absolutely. And do you think, although Wigan have no choice but to sell players, it's also a bit of a downside as well, because although it's raising money to buy creditors, it's one less asset for a new owner to have when they come in?
Yeah, I mean, every pound they get from a player sale is effectively £1 less than the new owner is going to be willing to pay, because they'll be assessing the squad on a day-to-day basis, and they'll be saying, well, we know we'll have agents, football agents, and other people connected to the football industry who will work out a market value for those players. So everybody knows roughly what Wigan's administrators are asking for the best members of the squad at present. If I was a potential new owner, I'd want them playing for Wigan Athletic next season, and I'm sure you would as a fan too. The last thing you want is a position that we saw with Bolton Wanderers 12 months ago, whereby, yes, you've got 11 players turning out in a shirt, but they're all kids. They're going to be bullied. Bolton were being slaughtered on the pitch. The players, it wasn't fair on them because they were only young lads. I would imagine the fans will get behind them regardless. That's not football. It's not what we sign up for as players, so as fans. It's not even what the apprentices sign up for as when they join the club. They want to develop until they're ready to play in the first team. So if the administrators are still in charge and the season starts, then you have that potential nightmare scenario of men against boys, and that's not good. It's not good for the integrity of the game. It's not good for Wigan Athletic on or off the pitch either.
Is there also an outside chance that Wigan may be forced to resign from the Football League because they need to provide, they have the finances to not just start the season but finish it at the end of, I presume I'm going to say May, but I doubt it's going to be later with the coronavirus pandemic, but it's all up in the air. I know the season does start on the 12th of September.
Well, one of the things that the administrators have said is that if they feel that they can't raise enough money to pay ongoing costs, then they'll have no choice but to put the club into liquidation. And that is nightmare scenario. Everybody loses their jobs as soon as the liquidator is appointed. the club will effectively be wound up and it will be forced to resign from the EFL. Nobody wants that.
No, that is the worst possible outcome. What needs to happen for Wigan to avoid the possibility of liquidation?
We've got to look for some good people out there who see the opportunity. They see the potential of Wigan in terms of a club that has its own stadium, training facilities, has a good core support base as well, and who feel that they can take the club forward. The club has been in the Premier League. It has won the FA Cup. It has got history and heritage. It has got close connections with the rugby league club as well, and you can have synergies by having close links with other sporting organisations, because it means that the as we know, the stadium is used on a more frequent basis. Football in general is a pretty dumb industry, because for most clubs they're only open 20 to 25 days a year. So with Wigan, there's the opportunity to be playing, having more events taking place, which generates more income for the facilities.
What kind of finances will be needed to save the club from going into liquidation?
It will come down to the offer which is made to the administrators. If that's sufficient, as far as they're concerned, if they will get more money from the person making the offer than passing the club on to a liquidator, then they're duty bound to take that offer. So is somebody going to come in with a fair offer for the club in terms of its assets? And if that is the case, then we should have a deal.
Absolutely. And as a Brighton fan, what is your thoughts on the situation? And obviously, as a football finance, you didn't refer yourself as an expert, as a teacher, but as someone who knows the finance really well, what do you make of everything, and what do you make of Wigan's chances of securing their long-term future as a football club? Because that is the most important thing. The fans don't want to lose their clubs. We've seen it at Bury, where the fans now grieve almost every Saturday because they know they should be at a gig lane cheering on their team. And I think this is the biggest message and the biggest picture we need to look at. I know fans have been quite upset that they've been losing their favourite players, but the way you've got to look at it is in a few months' time, you might not even have a favourite Wigan player to even pick from, because the club might not exist anymore.
I saw my club go within, again, a few days of going out of business. We lost our stadium. We ended up playing at Gillingham for 2 years. Football, even in the worst moments with football, there's always hope. And I think that's what Wigan fans need to focus on. We've lost Bury, but before that, the previous club that we lost, I think, was Maidstone in the late 90s. Football is a very resilient industry in the main. We're operating in scary times in terms of the pandemic. So there are negatives. But the very fact that Begbie's have said that there are interested parties, they have had negotiations. They were even quite positive in terms of the conversations that they'd had with Al Young in terms of trying to establish the nature of his original investment in the club. So there's hope, and that's what we've got to cling on to. That's go to bed each night and just cling on to that thought that every day that Wigan's still in existence gives you another fighting chance. And listen to anything that comes out from the administrators. Give any support that you can. I've seen the numbers in terms of the money which has been raised by the fans. Absolutely amazing effort. You're doing the right thing for the right cause. So don't be put off by any people that are being negative in terms of Wigan's plight.
I think that is a very strong message to almost end it on, because football fans should always have hope, even though it looks really unlikely. Wigan Athletic's motto has been, we defy the odds, it's in our DNA, and I don't think anything will be more fitting for Wigan Athletic to survive their biggest ever challenge and secure their long-term future as a club when it looks extremely unlikely, odds are stacked. And I think it would be a great way to have a happy ending of a really dire situation. And my final question is away from Wigan Athletic. It's about the coronavirus pandemic, because I think it's really important to address that over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully we'll find out whether fans will be allowed back in stadiums, because at the moment, every stadium in the country will look like the stadium behind me. No fans, completely empty. And I know people make a jibe as well, saying that Wigan fans have never been there. It's always been like this behind me. But I think, for me, my question to you is, do you believe that more clubs will be affected by potential administration, more in the lower leagues, League One, League Two, because of the lack of fans coming in? Because that is the main source of income for a lot of clubs. Because you're not only getting the income of buying tickets, you're getting the income of when they come to a game, buying a programme, a pie, a few pints, hospitality too. I know that sector of football is particularly missing out as well, because people, sponsors, businesses, they'll rent out a box and be executives for the day. And it's a massive loss, especially for clubs at the lower end of the English football spectrum. And I'd like to get your opinion on what's going to happen, and whether more clubs can find themselves in the situation that we're going to in. And I would never wish that on my worst enemy. I know rivalries in football are what make football so special. And for me, if a club doesn't no longer exist, you can't really have them rivalries anymore. You can't have your rivals there to beat anymore. So I think it's very important to kind of show solidarity to each football club.
Yes, I mean, we have seen evidence of Fans United campaigns historically. Presently, Charlton Athletic, they are probably the club with an equal chance of going out of business as Wigan. You don't want that for any club, because it is all part of the community. Do I think there's a chance of a further administrations over the next 12 months? Unfortunately so. My big fear is that football in the lower leagues can potentially limp on until the end of October, November, when the furlough scheme stops, and then it's effectively coming out of a tunnel. But the trouble is, it's coming out of a tunnel and it's heading for a locomotive coming in the opposite direction, because then, in theory, you've got to pay your PAYE, which is outstanding. You've got to pay your VAT. You've got to pay your wages in full, and with the potential to have grounds restricted to 20 or 30% of capacity, and the boxes themselves, whether they'll be allowed social gatherings in those, will be a huge challenge. I think the only positive from the club's point of view is that in the lower leagues, most players are on 1 or 2 year contracts. So, there have been 1,400 players who are out of contract in June or July this year. Clubs won't be offering them lucrative contracts for the next 12 months in the lower league. So they've already started to cut back on their costs. But as well as cutting back on their costs, I was talking to somebody earlier who said in the Championship, you've still got 4 or 5 clubs who haven't got front of shirt sponsorship deals for the forthcoming season. We're in the middle of August. This is unheard of. So it's going to be a huge challenge for football, because football is part of the entertainment industry. You talk to anybody that runs a theatre, runs a nightclub, runs a hotel or a pub or anything of that nature, they'll be telling you exactly the same things. They're genuinely scared for their industry. And unfortunately, football is not going to be immune from this. We've just got to hope that, as you said earlier, it's made you realise just how much your club means to you, and therefore making that little bit of extra effort to try to get to a couple more matches if you're not a season ticket holder, or if you are a season ticket holder, perhaps you'll buy a programme a bit more often than you have done in the past, just because that's going to help out your club a little bit. At the same time, of course, many fans themselves will have employment worries for their own jobs, and Wigan fans aren't going to be immune from that. It's tough, it's scary. Football isn't going to escape this.
It's going to be really staggering and really important for the long-term football, really, because we've never seen anything like it in our lives, in our lifetimes. I know we might be different generations, but we've both never seen a pandemic hit a sport industry so much, and there's so much uncertainty about everything. There's been rumours that fans will be allowed back in October. Let's just hope that can happen, because even if it's just 20% of the normal stadium capacity, we can kind of build on that. Obviously, it'll increase as the coronavirus pandemic eases off a little bit more, but it is the most crucial time for football clubs, and I think it's important to focus on obviously the sentimental side of things. Throughout this period, before it happened, to be honest, I was kind of becoming a little bit disinterested in football. I was getting a little bit fed up. I didn't really like it as much as I used to. My passion was kind of almost dying out in a way. But since this happened, it makes you realise how much the club actually means to you, how much of a big part of the life it plays, and I couldn't. It makes me physically sick at the thought that Wigan Athletic might not exist anymore. It's something that is a real possibility now, and you've got to. I know it's hard to it's easy to sugarcoat things when you don't want to talk about or realise the severity of a situation. I think this situation has hammered home to so many Wiganers that the fact of the matter is we might not have a club to support in a few months' time. And I think I urge football fans. I know a lot of un-Wigan fans, if that's a word, non-Wigan fans. They watch the podcast. I've had a few nice messages, and all I want to say is, please treasure your club. Please cherish the memories you have. Cherish every moment you get to support the club, because when it is this close to being pulled away from you, you realise how important it is. And having spoken to a lot of fans, you realise how important the social side of it is as well. Because a lot of the time, Wigan Athletic and other clubs, they are the life and soul of communities. They are the social hub. They are a lot of people's pride and joy. I know a lot of people, they work 9 to 5 all week, and the only thing they look forward to is football at the weekend. And that is the case for a lot of Wigan fans. Wigan's a working class town, and Wigan Athletic is a big part of a lot of people's lives, including my own. And you can kind of see the passion that has shined throughout this, because although it's been a really sad time for Wigan Athletic, it's been a great time for unifying the fans. They've come together in unimaginable ways, and it's been unbelievable to see as a fan. And as an outsider as well, I can imagine you've seen what's happened at Wigan with the fundraising and all the efforts the fans have been making. I think if I could just say a few examples of some fundraising. Stuart Alker, he's a massive Wigan fan. He ran 30 10Ks in the space of 30 days and raised over £2,500. Jack Green, he cycled from Wembley to Wigan, raising a couple £1,000s. Young Jacob Benbow and his mum Emma. Jacob is just, I believe he was 6 years old, and he raised over £500 selling his own belongings to help save his football club. And that just brought a smile to your face, as it will for a lot of people. And it's so important to kind of cherish that. A young 6-year-old who, when you're 6 years old, you don't really have much contact with life. You're at that stage where you don't really know much about what's important in life. Your biggest concern is you've got turkey dinosaurs for tea. But for him, he's got that perspective that Wigan Athletic means so much to him, and he's willing to sell his own stuff to do that. And I think every Wigan fan should be proud of what they've achieved over the last few months, regardless of what happens. I'm so proud of every fan, staff member, player, and it's been inspirational to see it as an aspiring journalist and as a fan. And I'd like to say in my final note, I've definitely waffled on a bit, and I apologise for that. But Kieran, thank you so much for coming on, not just today, over the previous weeks, because your insight has been so comforting in a way. It's been quite reassuring, because Wigan fans and a lot of fans, when it comes to the financial side of football, it's kind of like a different language. It's almost very, very foreign. It's like alien to us, because unless you're kind of aware of the sector you're looking at, it's very hard to judge. And I'd like to say a massive thank you for coming on, and I plugged it earlier and I'm going to do it again. Price of Football. If you're interested in finance or football, or even if it's just a general consensus of football, please watch Price of Football podcast on Spotify, because you'll learn a lot. It's very educational, and one of the most important things to life is to keep learning. And as Kieran would also emphasise, as a lecturer at a university. So Kieran, thank you so much. And I'm going to stop finally waffling on now. I do this quite a lot on these podcasts, and I do apologise. I know it's called the J Water podcast, but this is taking the mick a little bit. So I'm just going to pipe it down a little bit now and let Kieran have a final note to Wigan fans, and obviously say his almost goodbye for now, and hopefully we can do a positive podcast once there might be a little bit of a light at the end of this ever so long tunnel.
Well, I think Wigan fans have got a lot to be proud of. They've realised that they are part of the community, and the club's that community hub. It's part of your identity. As a football fan, if I list out the top 10 moments in my life, probably 6 of them involve my football club, and I'm sure it's the same for most fans. It's not the football itself, as you said earlier. It's that day out. In fact, normally it's a great day out, ruined by 90 minutes of football in the middle.
Yeah.
It's the fact that you're seeing those friends, you're sharing those memories. It's those incredible shared experiences, those last-minute goals, those denied penalties, those rubbish referees. It's something we will talk about as Wigan fans for years. And I'd just like to say to everybody, keep the faith. It's not over yet. Keep fighting the good fight.
Absolutely. Keep believing in the club, because we will get through this. And I'd also like to say, I understand it's a really emotionally and fragile time financially for a lot of people with the pandemic, but if you can donate anything to the club, I'll leave a link for the crowdfunding page below. We're close to reaching £200,000 now, and it goes a long way. The supporters club have obviously paid for travel for the players, a lot of expenses. They've recently paid for a new kit, which more information will come out shortly. So it's been a massive team effort, and I really like to thank everyone who's been involved. And again, thanks to Kieran, and I'd like to say thank you for everyone for watching. This has been the J Water podcast with Kieran Maguire, and I'd like to see you for the next one, for the next podcast. I'm not sure when it'll be, but we're going to keep you updated and informed of what's going on. So thank you so much for watching. I'm babbling on yet again. I really need to stop doing this. I sincerely apologise. I'm going to end this video now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later.